Hey everyone, this is Eric Rosen from ChessUniversity.com, and welcome to my first video series. Really excited about it. This is going to be all about crushing dubious openings. So basically openings that occur at maybe amateur levels, which are normally bad, or just not played at higher levels because of some specific reason. So without further ado, let's get into the first opening for today. This is going to be the Scotch opening: e4, e5, knight of 3, knight c6, d4, e take d4, knight take d4. And in this position, black has a very tricky move, which I think a lot of players don't really know about. And from the white perspective, if you play the Scotch, it's one of those things you have to know about, otherwise you can get into a lot of trouble. So the move here is queen h4 for black. And what this does is it attacks the pawn on e4, and it actually makes it a bit annoying for white to defend. Now, the most natural move here for white is knight c3, and this is also the best move. But then after bishop to b4, white is under serious pressure. And if white doesn't know what to do here, it's very, very easy for white to get worse. So if we notice, white can't really play f3 to defend the pawn because the f-pawn is pinned. If white tries to play some, I don't know, counter-attacking move like knight takes c6, this runs into queen take e4. And black will win a pawn after some line, let's say like queen e2, queen take e2, take. And I've actually had this position many times as black in online blitz games. A lot of players will just walk into this unknowingly as white. So let's go back. And let's see the best move for white and the way to basically destroy black's whole opening idea, this queen h4, bishop b4 sequence. So best move for white, bishop e2, which is a very strange move. It's the type of move that maybe you wouldn't normally find if you haven't seen this before. The point is white is completely ignoring defending the e-pawn and just accelerating development. And if black takes the e-pawn, then black will get in some trouble. So there's two lines to look at here. There's bishop takes e3 and queen take e4. We'll go through both of them. Let's start simple. Let's say bishop takes e3, b takes e3, queen take e4. So at first glance, this looks really nice for black. Black just won a pawn, double white's pawns on the c-file. However, there are now tactics which exist for white. And white has a very venomous move here, which actually guarantees white the advantage. So if you want to pause your video, think for white in this position, white to move. Okay, so the move is knight to b5. And what this does is simply targets the c7 pawn, which is very difficult for black to defend. And it turns out that black really doesn't have too many ways to defend. I think there's only two potential defending moves here for black. One is queen e5, and then one is king to d8. Let's start with queen e5. This is actually the worst of the two moves, because after which white has another very aggressive move, which basically wins material on the spot. So if you want to find it, pause your video, white to move and win material. And the move is pawn to f4. And what this does is essentially removes the queen from defending c7. So the queen has nowhere else to go to to hold the defense of the pawn. Queen has to move. Let's say moves away. White will win c7, win the rook, and then just be up material. I should note in this position, black could take on c3. But then white very simply plays bishop d2, and this is just a huge advantage for white. Up material, better development, going to castle very soon, and black's king will be pretty exposed in the middle game. So let's go back. We'll go back to this position. Other option for black instead of queen e5 was king d8, and this is the best black can do. Really, is this move king d8. And in this position, white will not win material immediately, but white can very simply castle. And I'm actually not going to go further here because black has a lot of different options, but the key thing to understand is that white has more than enough compensation for being down a pawn. White's already castled, white's ready to play moves like bishop f3, rook e1, and black has already lost castling rights with the king on d8. So there's going to be a lot of potential very early in the middle game for white to put pressure in the center and attack against the black king. So if we go back, after bishop e2, if black wants to take the pawn the other way, with starting with queen to queen take e4, it's going to actually be a very similar line. So in this position, white will still play knight b5, attacking c7. There's some small differences. One thing to note is that if bishop takes c3, pawn takes c3, the position just transposes to what we just saw before, just slightly different move order. I should also note that if queen e5, then white can play f4. Same idea as before, completely winning material. So there's really not too many other options for black in this position. If black plays king d8, same idea as before, we just castle and have a lot of compensation for the pawn. The only other try for black, which is not a very good try, is to play bishop a5, which does defend the pawn with the bishop. However, if you notice, the bishop is overworked in this position. Not only is the bishop defending the pawn, it's also pinning the knight, which defends the queen, or prevents white from capturing the queen. So in this case, white can take advantage of the overworked bishop by very simply taking on c7. And if the bishop were to recapture, then white would just win the queen. And if the king were to move, then white would very simply take the rook on a8. So if we go back to the position after queen h4, the key thing to know, knight c3, bishop e4, and very key move bishop e2. Not knight takes c6, but bishop e2. And if you're a Scotch player and you just remember bishop e2, remember the tactics with knight b5 in just a few moves, then you'll be very set to getting a very healthy advantage against this queen h4 move in the Scotch. So I hope you guys enjoyed that. If you have any questions, feel free to comment in the video, and I will be back for another episode of Crushing Dubious Openings. Thanks.